Welcome to the Barnett's web seminar on RECIST, a disease response assessment tool developed for the clinical trials of solid tumor oncology agents. A little bit about myself before we get started. My name is Vanessa LaRoche, and I'm a research professional with about 20 years of experience in clinical research and human subjects research. I've served in many roles over the years. I've been a clinical research coordinator where I conducted clinical trials, phase 1 through phase 4 studies. I was a CRA for quite some time, monitoring phase 1 through phase 4 studies as well. I was a clinical program and operations manager of a large research group at an academic medical center on the East Coast. I've also been an IRB compliance officer, and currently I'm in the clinical quality assurance world. I'm a quality assurance auditor currently. I have about 11 years of monitoring and auditing experience, 9 of which have been focused primarily on oncology trials. And I did also serve as a compliance officer for the oncology board of an IRB at a large academic medical center, so I'm also familiar with the regulatory side of conducting trials. At the end of today's session, you should be able to apply the knowledge learned to these tasks. Whenever RECIST criteria are used for response evaluation as part of a clinical trial, it's critical for the entire research team. That includes the project managers, the medical monitors, the CRAs, the investigators, and the site staff. They need to clearly understand and consistently apply the criteria, and failure to do so can put the study objectives in jeopardy. So the most important takeaway from this presentation is that RECIST relies on reproducibility and consistency. The purpose of an oncology trial is to determine whether a cancer treatment is effective. Assessing changes in tumor burden over the course of a trial is one method used for determining the effectiveness of that treatment. Tumor burden, or you may also hear the term tumor load, refers to the number of cancer cells, the size of a tumor, or the amount of cancer that's in a body. Tumor shrinkage and the time to disease progression are common endpoints used in many oncology trials. However, these endpoints are useful only if we're able to systematically measure and compare treatments and treatment outcomes within a study and across different studies as well. To do so, we need to use a standardized response criteria to ensure that treatment outcomes are being consistently measured and reported. So how do we do that? We need to come up with some sort of systematic standardized response criteria. So here we'll discuss a few early efforts in documenting response. One of the first standardized response criteria was developed in the 1940s by Sidney Farber and his colleagues at Boston Children's Hospital. This team developed a criteria to assess disease and progression in pediatric patients receiving treatment for acute lymphoid leukemia. So in 1956, the team published a formalized set of outcomes criteria for hematologic malignancies, which formed the basis of the criteria that's still in use today, which is pretty amazing if you think about it. Something that was developed in the 1950s is still in use today. In the decades to follow, various cooperative groups began to define exactly what data is necessary to report in a clinical trial and what constitutes response to a cancer agent. In the 1960s, C. Gordon Zubrod and members of the newly formed Eastern Cooperative Oncology Group, or ECOG, developed a model for multi-center clinical trials and argued for a criteria for including and excluding subjects, assigning treatment, and measuring response. As a side note, Dr. Zubrod and ECOG were also responsible for developing the ECOG performance scale, also called the ECOG score or the Zubrod score, which is a scoring system used in oncology to measure patients' quality of life. So if you have worked on oncology trials, you are very familiar. You've seen the ECOG performance scale or the ECOG performance status pretty regularly.